I come home and I'm like, does your job, is it just the best thing ever? Does it feel like pretend to you? You know, like it's so fun that you're playing like back as a kid.
Like you're playing house.
Adam's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
no.
And he's like, no, and I don't think you're living in like a real world.
Welcome to Brain Stoke. I'm Tom Telford. Here today, our guest co-host, Kevin Day. Kevin, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Today, we are in the home of the Beckstrom family, Adam and Andrea Beckstrom. And what's cool about today is that as we kick off this new season, LÉVO is the key sponsor of Brain Stoke, and Andrea is the medical director and also co-owner of LÉVO. So we're grateful to be in their home today to visit with these two. Why don't we start, maybe Adam, because I mentioned a little bit about Andrea. Let's start with you. Tell us who you are, what you do for a living, a little bit about your background, and then maybe Andrea can do the same, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having us on. So I'm an attorney here in town. I practice at a law firm called Denton's, and my particular practice is with intellectual property law. So I'm on the litigation side. We do patents, copyrights, trademarks, and trade secrets. Denton's is a full-service firm, so we help out on a lot of different matters, but my practice is particularly focused on IP. I grew up here in the Salt Lake Valley, went to the University of Utah for undergrad, and I thought I was headed to medical school. I did undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering and then did a master's degree in that as well.
Brain power in this room, on this couch.
Yeah. But
That's going to be a discussion item because education knowledge is clearly in the DNA here. So keep going, but that's, impressive.
well, so I knew for sure when I headed to law school that I was going to be in the patent space or in intellectual property. So kind of that core coursework and things like that set up, even though it wasn't the original path, helped me to get to where I wanted to be with intellectual property law. So.
Awesome. Andrea, tell us more about you.
I'm from Utah, lived here my whole life besides when Adam went to law school back east, which we loved. Well, Adam didn't see much of it. He was in the library the whole time, but that was a fun adventure. Went to the University of Utah as well for my nursing bachelor's degree and my master's. And have loved being here, close to family.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When did you decide, Adam, that you were going to go to law school? When was that decision made?
Yeah. So partway through, probably 3/4 of the way through my undergrad degree, maybe halfway through. And the decision had a lot to do with, so I had taken a lot of pre-med classes before my mission. Like I had taken AP chemistry as a sophomore in high school, and kind of a lot of those other classes in high school, and then coming into undergrad, I was really young in my grade, so by the time I had gone on my mission, I had taken most of my pre-med classes, and I'd done reasonably well. I had some what I would call blemishes on my transcript. We'll talk more about kind of how those came about, but they felt like blemishes. It was like you will not make it to med school is how it felt to me, right? Like a B+ in cell biology or whatever it was. But when I had taken organic chemistry, the first part before my mission, I came back, and this is while Andrea and I were dating, and then got married. I got like a C- in OChem 2, and I was like, I don't remember any of that stuff from before, and now it's time right now to take the MCAT, right? Because of the timing of the way that school had worked out. So I'd been away from it for 2 years plus. Some of those had been 5 years since I even had the class, and I had decent grades, not phenomenal grades, but I was when that C- came, it was like a nail in the coffin. I was like, nobody will accept me to medical school. And so I started to look at other options. A guy came to our class. We had a class called Careers in Biomedical Engineering. And the reason I wanted to go to medical school is because Andrea and I had talked before. I wanted to be able to have as many kids as we wanted to have. I think family is one of the most important things in life. I loved kids and just wanted to be able to support as many children as we wanted to have and not have finances be the reason we decided, hey, we're probably tapped out, right? So it's funny to say this, but the guy came and he wrote a big $sign on the board. He said, this is the reason to go become a patent attorney, right? And I was not out for the, I'm going to build a humongous home. I'm going to have all the cars and the wealth and whatever. But for sure, that was enticing to me to say, okay, here's another way, if I don't go to medical school, that I can still make good money, support a family, have as many kids as we want to have. And so I started looking into patent law, took another class called Innovation Protection for Scientists and Engineers that we drafted some patent language. We talked about copyright and trademarks, and I was like, hey, this stuff's pretty cool. And the LSAT's not comprehensive. So you just have to take the test, and if you do okay, then you can apply to law school. So that's kind of how that decision went for me. And looking back, it's very short-sighted. I think it's kind of a theme in life when you're in this little moment, especially as like a teenager or in high school, but in college, that you say, this is the whole world. This is so all-consuming, this C-, and it's deciding the rest of my life. And if I would have paused in that moment and said, look, if you really want to go to medical school, just take a year or two. At the time, it's like I was married, and it was time to support a family. Yeah. And I was like, nope, that door is shut, and you have to find a different path. And I think that was pretty short-sighted. If I could have just paused, maybe had somebody else help me realize if you really want to do that, 2 years is nothing compared to everything else that's moving forward. So.
In that moment, even hearing you describe that, I go back to when I was a young husband thinking the weight is huge, like the stakes are high. So I want to come back to that in a minute. I want to talk about your trade secrets, and what was the process that you went through to help kind of refine those decisions, and what were the motives and what was going on. So we'll come back to that. Andrea, tell us about your decision. At what point did you make a decision, hey, I want to be a nurse, I want to care for other people?
Yeah, I have always loved helping people. I would bake cookies for the scary man on our street growing up. Now I can't remember his name, but literally my mom said, don't take him cookies anymore. So I just always loved doing stuff like that. And so I don't remember when exactly it was nurse that was what my future was going to be. But yeah, I knew right when I went to college, right after high school, I got my CNA, and then started the path. But I did not expect to go on to do psychiatry in nursing for my master's. My psychiatry clinical was actually, I had to find humor in it because it broke my heart. My friend and I were at the VA hospital, and these are the sickest of the sick. This was their life in a lockdown unit, and so that was hard. But somehow God put me at the U, and I could start the program the day after, or the Monday after we got married.
Yeah.
And I was actually really embarrassed to tell people that was what I was doing as a specialty, which makes me sad. But you would hear, you have to be one to treat one. So that meant I was crazy, and that was embarrassing because people didn't know, but I did have a lot of mental health struggle, and I didn't talk about it really. And so, that's kind of what took me down that road, and it's been bigger and better than I could have imagined. So
we got to double click on this because for our listeners, I get the benefit and pleasure of working with Andrea not every day, but a lot of days, being a co-owner of LÉVO and being involved with you. I was excited to come today to kind of go deeper into your story. So as we kind of dive into that further, what was it about for both of you? And either answer first, but what was it about education when you were growing up that was such an emphasis? Because oftentimes you will hear, at least in Utah, maybe even LDS culture, that one or the other kind of pursues their education and the other is supportive for family, or vice versa. How was education in both of your DNA growing up, and how did you say, hey, we're going to go, to master's level or to law school? What was it about growing up?
You go first.
Yeah, so one of the things, as far as pursuing it together, one of the things that I loved about Andrea when I met her is how intelligent she was, right? And how accomplished she was already. I had just come home from my mission, and she was already graduated from nursing school and had bought a house. And I was like, I am way out of my league.
Trophy
here.
husband.
Totally.
Why, Adam?
I was like,
why do you got to be so aggressive? Just let her roll and like watch Sports Center and do laundry.
So I came back. I had been working at LDS Hospital in the operating room, and I had worked there before my mission. So I came back, and there's this new nurse that's working there in the past 2 years. And it's funny because in the operating room, you got your masks on, your hats, whatever. I could just see her eyes. Right? That's all I could see. These gorgeous blue eyes. And I was like, who is that? Who's this nurse? And then I asked people about her and found out, how accomplished she was and where she was at. And she was a couple years older than me. And I was like, there's no way that I could ask her out. So finally I built up the courage, asked her out. So as far as like doing it together, she was super accomplished before I even met her. For myself, both of my parents had college degrees. My mom was a elementary school teacher. She taught kindergarten and first grade. My dad's a chemical engineer, and he was the number one engineer in all of the engineering disciplines, not just chemical engineering his year, right? So I don't know what you call that. It's like super valedictorian in college.
Yeah,
but
bright, super bright.
Yeah, so college for him, it was never a question. He said, you guys need to pay for your own college. We'll pay for you to live, whatever. If you're going to live at, you can either live at home with us, or if you go away to college, but you need to find a way to pay for college. So it wasn't like, if you go to college, it was like, you will go to college.
Assumed.
And, either get a scholarship or work hard enough to save up money so that you can go to college. And so, also just being brought up, like, I'm a person that has a lot of faith, and my religion teaches that, families are eternal, and you need to be prepared to become a husband and a father and to support your children. And so all of that was just part of the plan, that if you're going to support your family, get as much education as possible. That's just what we're taught. So.
Did you correlate that intellect and education meant greater capability of providing?
Certainly. I remember in high school, my mom said, because I had struggled in elementary school and junior high with grades. And I remember 8th grade was a super hard year for me, friendship-wise, and also kind of grades-wise. And I remember her saying, because I'm coming into 9th grade year, and she just said, look, these grades that you get in high school are going to determine what college you'll go to, what opportunities, what scholarships are available to you. So you really need to dial in now. Now's the time, and that's what's going to help you to be able to support your family. I mean, that was a direct conversation with her. So she said, it's time to get serious. You're totally capable, and it's time to dial in and really make it happen. So,
yeah, I love that. Stern mom.
I mean, we had a lot of frank conversations for sure, but
yeah,
in incredible loving and kindness.
Yeah.
There was. Yeah.
Let's come back to that. Andrea, what about you? What was going on in your household where education and the pursuit of that was so important?
Yeah, my I have two older sisters, and my oldest sister did go to nursing school, and I was like, that seems cool. I knew I already wanted to do that. And then my other sister did go on and became a pharmacist. And I guess that had some influence, but what I do remember is when I was maybe 8th or 9th grade, one of my church leaders, she told this story about this boy who loved backhoes and wanted to drive one. One day he's like, that's my dream job, to drive that. And his dad said, well, why don't you work so that you can not have to drive it every day. You can choose when you want to drive it, and it'll still be fun. I don't know why that stuck in my head, because not that I wanted to be in construction, but just the idea of just get a lot of training in whatever it be, and then you can kind of enjoy what you're doing, and pick and choose a little more, maybe favorite things that you want to do. And if I'm in a position where I need to support down the road, then I can. So that was just ingrained in me from a young age. So,
Yeah.
And school gave me a lot of confidence at the cost of a lot of anxiety, though, and perfectionistic tendencies. But I could do it, and I could do it well. And I think I liked how that felt. And so, yeah, that got me through my bachelor's. And I did not at the time know that I wanted to go on to get a master's, but I was still working in the operating room, and I just had this pull for something more. Yeah, so I went on and did more, and I loved it. And I would do more still if I had time.
Yeah. When you look back and think about your childhood self and education in school, you mentioned some of the perfectionistic and, that there was anxiousness involved there. Tell us a funny story. Think back of just that when you think now of your younger self and how you approached or thought about school. Is there anything funny that you can remember just about the perfectionistic tendencies that were going on in your mind?
Yeah, this wasn't grade related, but one was not wanting to be late, just be on time, get good grades. So I remember all the way back to kindergarten laying out my outfit probably every night, and I would sleep in my socks because I thought that was going to get me ahead of the game. And that is weird to me.
I love that.
But yeah, and I remember there's a friend that always says, you always got better grades than me. And she's way smarter, but we laugh about that still. We're still friends. We were friends all through elementary. And she's like, you always got the 100. And I was like 99. So that's funny because I didn't know she was competitive.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I can tell you one from Andrea.
Yeah,
just from
tell
an
us.
outsider's
Tell us.
perspective. So she was in her graduate program for nursing, and she'd come home just overwhelmed. And she's like, I'm sitting in these classes, and I'm like the dumbest person in these classes, and they expect us to say stuff and contribute. I have nothing to say. If I say something, it's going to be the wrong thing, and
I was mute.
Yeah, she's like, I'm seriously not smart, and I'm like, honey, you have straight A's through high school, through college, and in your nursing program. Straight A's. I said, so your track record would indicate otherwise. You are super smart, super capable. And, yeah, it's okay to make a mistake. You might raise your hand and have the wrong answer, but, man, you have tons to contribute. So it's not really a funny story, but just the way that she was thinking inside her head, sitting in these classes like, I'm not capable, when obviously, super smart, super bright.
Yeah. Both of you have described what I'm going to say high expectations, right, of self, whether that was parents or, you took that on from somewhere else. But talk more about just expectations of self and how that may have led into some of your own mental health journey, some of the shaping items, that led to the struggle, as we talk about on the podcast, just the struggle in Stoke. So maybe go back to that and just share how that expectation or those expectations of self led into some of the struggle.
Tom, can I add to that really quick?
Yeah, of course.
These conversations that you guys are talking about with your parents seem so ahead of their time. And as I see kids, this idea of your mom saying, why don't you figure out something to do that allows you to do that thing that you love and still love it versus, oh, I want to be this when I grow up because I love it so much, and which often leads to burnout and stuff. And where you have kids nowadays who are thinking that they want to jump into something that's so hot topic and they love it so much, and then as soon as they do, they're likely going to just fizzle out. Where it was so smart, like that comment, to say, why don't you think about this, so that you can go drive that backhoe. Like, you have property and you can just go drive your backhoe whenever you want and build whatever you want, kind of thing, versus doing it sun up to sundown for a paycheck. I think those kind of conversations, like, dive in a little bit on that, of how you interpreted that in addition to Tom's question. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. So to Tom's question, yeah, it was just self-imposed high expectations. But there was a lot of struggle there. So the grades came at a big expense around 8th grade. And one of the reasons I got really good grades in 8th grade is because I dropped all my honors classes, and and it just was too overwhelming to me, because I thought, what if I don't get an A in this? And that, looking back, I think that's too bad that I missed out on that opportunity to fail, to be honest, because it's taken me up until pretty much a few years ago where everything still had to be perfect, had to say the right thing, do the right thing at work, not make any mistakes. And now I see how valuable it is to make mistakes and be okay with that. It's not failure at all. It's actually huge growth and a huge opportunity that can come from that. And so that's where a lot of the struggle was. And then it happened. I dropped out of AP History in junior year, and that's my favorite subject. I would have loved it, but I was just so nervous about the stress of it. So I wish I would have taken more risks. I would have learned more, had I had a B, or heaven forbid a C, and learned what can I do better next time, or how can I grow? So that's kind of some of the struggle there, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Knowing you and knowing, working with you, you have a high standard of self, but I also see this inner peace that comes out, that maybe it's reflection on your childhood, or maybe just reflection on, getting through your teen years and adulthood, and almost you've found the ability to be okay with not this perfectionism, this high standard of self. And that inner peace that comes from that is, there's something there, how you uncovered it, and a recognition of that. So, I want to hear Adam's story, a little bit about, expectations, but share more about that. What occurred that then made you recognize in your life, I need to, I don't know, recategorize how I view this thing of expectation or high expectation?
Yeah, well, my whole life I've dealt with anxiety, high anxiety. When we were first married, I would get out of bed and have to crawl to the bathroom or to get breakfast, because I was so anxious, because I was the charge nurse of the cardiovascular rooms, and that made me sick. And so I wanted to be perfect, but it made me sick, and Adam had to bring me toast so I could eat something to calm down my stomach. I felt the physical symptoms so much. And then again, in my master's program, I didn't want to say anything in the class. I was, soaking in all the info and getting good grades, but I didn't want to risk not saying the right thing, or people thinking I was not smart, or that was a dumb thing to say, where I would have learned so much more if I spoke up. So what shifted really has been being in this job. I have, I've been filmed and interviewed and been really awkward doing it at times and felt so sick about it. But every time, I've learned that every time you do something hard, it gets easier and it makes you have more bravery. And there's a good book called The Confidence Code for Girls. I'm sure there's one for boys. I just have all girls, so I haven't read the boy one. But I mean, that's not what shifted, but it talks about that. The more you try difficult things that you might fail at and it might be a bust, then next time you'll try something and it won't be as scary and it'll be easier. And doing this today is easier for me, being interviewed and talking about all this stuff. It's a lot easier because I've done it more and more, and I teach at work now. I never thought I would be in a leadership position or teach. That blows my mind that I want to do it, but it's the drive to help others that need to hear where they can find help and give people hope. That's what made me crack open the perfectionism and let my flaws out, because I just don't care anymore. That's not helping anybody.
I love that sentiment of by being able to face it on your own, you're equipped to be able to give back to others. And this is a theme, that we'll come back to in a minute. But when Kevin brought up this idea of not having the pressure to make your career do one thing or be one way, that you can do the things that you love, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your job per se. In you, I have found that the very thing that you love doing is your job to a degree. I mean, do you view it that way? That what you're doing right now is that you love it, that you're passionate about it? Or, are there moments where you think, I need to get away from this?
No, it doesn't. Adam can attest to this because I'll come home, and I've said this before to people, but I come home and I'm like, is it just the best thing ever? Does it feel like pretend to you? Like it's so fun that you're playing like back as a kid.
Like you're playing house.
Adam's like, no.
And he's like, no, and I don't think you're living in like a real world, But to me, it feels so fun. And I think it's because I see patients one day a week, and I would love to do that and help more people that way. But I help in other ways by being a resource to other providers at LÉVO, which is so much fun to teach and to think, wow, I can actually help guide them through this, where they should go with a patient. But it is hard. Everyone that works in mental health knows that you're in the trenches, and you have to watch your own mental health carefully to make sure you are at your best so you can give others your best and help lift them. And so that's one reason why I get to pick and choose what I do right now. I get to do some stuff on social media and teach and see patients. And so it makes me love the patients I see so much. And I don't get burnt out. I mean, it's always just fun.
Yeah.
I really can say that. And I go to work every day, and even on vacation, I'll go into clinics and say, do you need resources? Because it's so fun to me. I don't know if my kids think it's that fun, but Adam's a good support with that too. I'll stop. I'll just pull over. Oh, there's a clinic. Let's go in. So it's pure fun. I love it.
That's awesome. Andrea at LÉVO, we mentioned this in the beginning, but as the medical director, she literally is the coach of coaches. She is helping those men and women who are sitting with clients and patients on a regular basis who have come seeking their own, mental health coaching. So it's fun to see. It's fun to see you embrace that role. Adam, go back. I want to hear the expectations, of self and how that pressure, was a factor in your development, and potentially even how it led into some of the challenges that you have faced over your, childhood, teenage years, and as a young adult.
Sure. I think I already mentioned, my dad was super successful, right, in college, and he had an opportunity to go, work and get his PhD. His mentor begged him to do that, and he said, "Hey, it's time to support my family," and he had a good job offer coming out. So, rather than go on and get a PhD, he just took his bachelor's and went into the field in chemical engineering. But those weren't like, I didn't feel like those were an external imposition on expectations, but I certainly saw his success and felt like I had a lot to measure up to, like no question about that. So, and I just want to be clear in all of this conversation. I grew up in a phenomenal home, phenomenal. Both parents, loving, caring, super supportive, that wanted to help me on my way. And so anything that I say about kind of relationships or the way that things kind of went is not to say that that I look upon them badly or that we have a bad relationship in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so in elementary school, I really had trouble focusing. I mean, looking back and knowing what I know, it's ADHD. There's no question about it. And my mom, being trained for an early childhood education endorsement, she's trained to watch for those things and to make recommendations to parents about, hey, maybe you should get your child tested. And I know now that she had talked to my dad about that with me. And, you know, I'm not privy to those conversations. I don't know exactly how they went down, but at the end of the day, my dad felt like, hey, you know, there's a lot of kids that are over medicated. I think Ritalin was really popular at the time, and it was really the only option. And he kind of felt like there was a lot of zombie kids walking around, and that he was of the mindset that I was extremely intelligent, and that if I would just apply myself, that I could be successful. It's just apply yourself, right? So I remember in elementary school going in to see my teachers every midterm, every single one, I would have C's and D's or F's. And my mom would be like, what are you doing in school? And so we'd go into my classroom. My little desk would be packed, overflowing with papers, like sticking out of the desk. And we would turn my desk over, dump them on the ground. There would be a giant pile of papers. And we would pull out assignment after assignment that was completed, 100% correct, just not turned in, or just one problem not done, over and over and over. And my teachers, thankfully, were accommodating. They allowed us to put all those papers together and turn them in, and they graded them, and I'd have A's or B's, right? But every midterm. And I remember in like 5th and 6th grade, you know, specifically, every term my teacher's coming and to my parents and saying, this kid won't stay in his class. He can't, or stay in his seat. He can't stay in his seat. Can you help him? I'd be done with my assignments, and I'd just be wandering around the room and just like talking to people, not really being like in their face, but just distracting others. And my mom, I'm sure, was like, this kid needs help. And my dad's just like, no, he's got it. He's got it. So coming into junior high, it was a struggle, and even into high school. But I remember in high school, every like term project or test to prepare for, or getting close to grades at the end, I would be way behind, and the project would be due. It'd be the night before, and I would be like, I'm gonna fail. I'm 100% gonna fail. I cannot do this. And my dad would be like, well, why haven't you done it? You should have been doing it. Come on. Like, you have so much ability. If you will just discipline yourself, you could do anything you want to do in life. So you need to just discipline yourself. And my mom, she said, you know what? I know you because you're me. Like, your mind works the way that my mind works. And you can do this. And it's not going to be easy, but you got to do it right now. And I'm like, it's due tomorrow. I can't do this. And she's like, okay, so you're in a bad spot. You can sit down in the middle of the road in traffic and get hit by a car, or you can get up and get started and get out, go do it. She said, don't. So she would always say that to me, don't sit down in the middle of the road. Just get started. And so she would stay up with me until 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning to complete these assignments or these projects. And man, it became I was able to get them done. I got them done. I'd turn them in. I'd get a good grade. But it was just over and over again, you know. But she showed me that it's never too late. You can do it. Just get started. I'm here with you. I'll support you. Not like, well, you messed up. Yeah, you are at a bad spot. So sorry, you're not going to make it. So, but even, you know, so feeling like I needed to live up to those expectations. going into college, the same thing, those grades, that I felt like, hey, because in college, the wait till the end, try to get it going, it's cell biology or whatever, it becomes too difficult. You're just not able to do that, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I fell a little bit short, and I felt like that was, game ending for me. And I remember I had applied. So standardized tests were ridiculously hard for me, right? So on the ACT, my reading comprehension score was like 8 points lower than all of my other ones, which were super high, right? And I was like, I just couldn't get through the passage. I'd read it like 2 or 3 times and be like, what did I just read? And I'd go back and try to answer the questions. I'd be like, I have no idea what I read. And I'd start it again. So, that was, and I tried to learn techniques or things to help me. And I just wasn't on my own. I just couldn't be successful at that, which is frustrating for me. The same thing with the LSAT. I mean, that's a lot of reading and figuring it out. So I felt like that really, kind of ADHD really affected my ability to score well on standardized tests. But, I was able to get into law school and not, not the one that I would hope to get into, but I made it my goal. I said, I'm going to work extremely hard, and I'm going to transfer after my first year. And everything that I'd read said you need to be in your top 10% to do that. And I said, okay, one thing that my mom has taught me is if you just, even though this may be a struggle for you, if you work really hard and just put in the extra effort, you can do it. But you have to do it now. You have to start. And so for law school, I just said, okay, to be in the top 10%, I'm going to have to work super hard. So I would go down in the library. I'd isolate myself, no distractions, nothing else around me. I'd put on, they didn't have noise canceling headphones. I'd wear like shotgun shooting ear protection. These kids are probably like, man, this guy's a shooter. Like we got to watch out for him. But literally at GW in the basement, it's like 6 floors down in the ground. Nobody's down there. And I would just study. I'd study in the morning. I'd get up early. I'd come home to help Andrea. We had brand new kids. I'd hold them for a couple hours, and I'd give them back, crying, colicky baby.
Yeah.
And she felt abandoned probably, but I said, hey, I'm going to put in this time. I'd go back to school until it closed, and then I'd come home. And, at the end of the first year, I was able to be in the top 10% and transfer to the school I wanted to get into. And, I really, when I met with my, recently I've started to try to implement some things that could help me through rather than just do it, discipline yourself, which is super hard for ADHD. I'm really trying, and for my dad, we had a lot of nagging, just do it. And I'm like, I'm trying, but I'm not being successful. But I started to, I've seen some mental health counselors. I've started some ADHD medication. And, the first ones that I tried really weren't successful. And I tried some other ones, and they've been a lot better for me. So even the first ones that I've tried, I was like, God, I really feel crummy. I don't feel very good coming off this one or whatever. And so we tried some different ones. And I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. But the first counselor I met with Aspire Medical before Andrea was ever, excuse me.
It's all good.
Aspire Counseling.
It's all
Before
good.
Andrea was ever even involved with Aspire Medical, I met with a Aspire Counseling counselor. And as he listened to me and as we talked about kind of this whole story and about ADHD and how it's affected me and whatever, he just sat back and he's like, man, I talked to tons of people who have this struggle, and there's no way that you would have been able to get where you are without like your mom being there and helping to teach you some skills and to give you that encouragement and to say, you can do it. Here's how. Start, get going. I'll be here with you. Don't give up. And a lot of other just little things that would help. But really it's, I do a ton of credit to my mom for doing that. And anyway.
I'm a mama's boy too, Adam. Thank you for sharing all of it. To our listeners, to be totally frank and transparent, this conversation was on purpose, intentional for listeners, parents, individuals, Anybody who understands what it's to have perfectionism, anxiety, the byproducts of those things, in a life and in a home, what it's like to have ADHD in your family. I'm not going to say names, but in my current family today, of the 5 members, 4 have been told they have ADHD, including myself. And when I think back, hearing your story, and I love what your mom said, Adam, don't sit in the road. I sat in the road all the way through. I love my parents like you. They're amazing people. It's possible for parents to love their children and they themselves not be able to recognize what to do or what they need. And I say that hoping that there are some parents who are going to hear this and feel guilt, or that they didn't catch it, or that they don't know what's going on. I'm going to raise my hand right now and say, my parents are some of the most amazing people. They didn't see it or get it to the extent that I had it. And so I want to just double click with you on something. What I recognized from a very young age, because I also was the kid in class who was the major distraction. I can remember my parents being called and coming into school, and the teacher was just kind of throwing their hands up like, Tommy distracts the class, right? And parents may hear that and say, well, he's hyper, right? In the ADHD, he's hyper, and so he's distracting. And as an adult, what I've come to recognize, having ADHD and looking back, is that I was coping. I was literally trying to survive the day. And it's amazing what instincts kick in to children when they're just trying to survive. This sounds dramatic, but when the bus would show up to my bus stop, I remember feeling the worst anxiety, like Andrea, in my gut. I'm about to go to prison for 8 hours. I was freaked out. I felt sick on the bus. I felt sick walking into school because I knew the pressure that was on me to stay in my chair, to hear what was going on when I had no clue. To your point about reading comprehension, when my teacher would start speaking, I literally was on the ski hill. Immediately, it was a cue. Like, I'm outside. I don't know. I didn't hear. I literally could not focus and hear those things. And so what do you do in an environment where it's high pressure? You can't do it. You just start to cope and you survive. And so I became amazing at, one, making people laugh and distracting, right? All the kids in my class. I'm sure my teachers thought that I was going to grow up and be like this major flirt, which in 7th grade, by the way, I was voted biggest flirt. But because I had learned to develop the skills just to survive in an environment where I was totally uncomfortable and out of place. School was church was an entirely different experience with ADHD. Like, wow. Amazing. 3 hours. Oh, thank goodness for 2 hours, right? But as you, Adam, as you kind of describe that, and as you think through those things, you landed on tools. You landed on therapy. You landed on medication, and your wife actually can prescribe it. It's amazing that this is where you both have landed, right? On this couch, in this place. We spoke about this before we started, but a very good friend, Trevor Farnes, who is the CEO of Mountain Ops, he was on the podcast, and he recently spoke at a mental health town hall at Silicon Slopes last week. He said, "You are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were." You two now are owners of LÉVO, a mental health company that is sitting with people in their suffer. Mm-hmm. And you're now positioned, all that you've gone through, all the struggle that you've gone through, you're now in that spot. Andrea, talk about that, individually, collectively as a couple, but the struggle that you have faced has now positioned you to do what you do. Share more about that.
Yeah, that was part of what had me interested in coming to LÉVO to work full time, because I was happy where I was. Adam's therapist had actually said, "Hey, we need a nurse practitioner, at Aspire Medical. You should come." I was like, "I'm good." I was working 6 hours a week, telehealth. It was a cake job. It was awesome. And I loved who I was helping, the clientele I had. And so then a couple people, Adam was one of them, that said, think of the impact you can have if you go and you're not necessarily, I knew I wouldn't be seeing more patients. It was going to be about the same patient hour time. But he said, you get to teach the providers and think of all the people they get to impact. And even in the community, and meeting people to show them where resources are. That has a big impact because people don't know where to go. So that is fulfilling to me. And I had kids that were in school, all day, and I was a little lost. I had a little too much time on my hands and was feeling not fulfilled. And this has overflowed my cup. And speaking to that quote, which I love, it's so true. So me sharing what I have dealt with, an eating disorder in 8th grade and anxiety, and then I would say depression with pregnancy loss, multiple late losses, that just broke me. And I didn't share my stories for a long time. I was embarrassed. And also the people saying, "Oh, golly, you're in psychiatry, so you're crazy, if you're going to go into that. So you must," and it was so negative to me. But I love the positive spin on the help it can and bring. And I have found the more I share, the more people say, "Thank you, I'm in that position," or "What did you do to get help?" So I agree. If you've lived it, it helps me with my patients. When I sit there, I have to hold back the tears because I want to jump up and give them a big hug and say, "I know what anxiety is. I know how bad it is." And I don't bring my personal, story into it all the time. I'll give bits and pieces, but it's not about me. But I do want to let them know I know how low it feels. And I also love that I can tell them the low and the pain and the darkness doesn't sit there forever. It passes. If you can just work through it, you can find joy and happiness again. And yes, you'll have more hard times, but that's the beauty of sharing your story. It helps you heal, and you get to help others.
What is it about the sharing that is clinical, that is part of healing or dealing with the struggle that someone is facing?
Yeah. Sharing, for one thing, takes the shame out of it. I had a lot of shame, which is silly because I didn't make that happen to myself. I did use the eating disorder as a coping skill for the perfectionism and the anxiety because I wanted control, and it was something I could be good at. Where friends were, kind of tricky in junior high and things like that. So I was like, "Hey, I'm really good at being strict and perfect at something," and it actually, started at being perfect at eating, quote unquote, healthy, which I know I don't use that term, but I took it too far because I was perfect at it. And then it turned into, I couldn't see the problem. And so sharing my story takes the shame out of it. There's no shame in being anxious or depressed, and it doesn't make you odd or it makes you better, actually, because you can have empathy for others and you can share that and help others heal as well. So clinically talking about it and working through it, you learn skills to get through it. And the more you talk about it, the easier it is. And then, it used to make my throat close up. I couldn't talk about it, made me shake a little bit. But it's so beneficial for yourself to share your story. And it doesn't have to be like I am right now. This has taken so long to not be scared to tell whoever and let anyone hear it. But I realize the benefit in it, but it can be in your journal. It can be with a trusted friend. Make sure it is a trusted friend that is willing to listen to that hard. And I have shared with friends before that I was told who to talk to. I just had a strong feeling of who I should go to, and it led me to other steps in my healing, or go to a therapist, or if you still don't know what's wrong, or a therapist recommends a medication assessment, you can get that as well. There's so many tools out there, and that's why just speaking up can be helpful. One thing I do want to say, though, is in 8th grade, I remember when I was going through my disordered eating, I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't know I was having an issue. I thought I looked great.
I'm strong. I'm disciplined.
Yeah,
I
was
can eat
killing
good stuff.
it at literally starving myself. And my parents didn't know what to do and didn't know where to go. And I remember eating by myself on the couch, and my dad said, "Is that all you're gonna?" Like, he knew something was up, but he didn't know what to do. He didn't want to be pushy. He's very gentle and kind, but he said, "Is that your whole dinner?" And I said, "Oh no, I lied." I said, "No, that's not it." So, and luckily my mom took me to an endocrinologist, but I know a lot of teens are resistant. So that is hard, and my sister said, "What's wrong with you?" We'd be on the ski lift, and she's like, "Why don't you talk anymore?" I would just sit on the lift, and we were such good friends and had so much fun. I didn't know the answer to that, so I just sat in silence because I didn't know the answer. So if you notice that something is up with your child or teen or spouse, and they don't know, they might not know what to say. I thought everything was fine. Just take them. Listen, and you have to be ready to go to get help, but sometimes I take it as, let's go together to work on our relationship. I wish we knew of a therapist back in 8th grade where my mom could have said, let's just go and work as a family, instead of saying, I'm going to take you because something's wrong with you. That feels threatening to teens and kids especially teens that already feel, out of place. They're trying to fit in. They don't want to go to a therapist. They don't want to take a medication, and be different, but it doesn't make them different. So just helping them realize that can be helpful, but sometimes that can be a way around it. And I've also heard bribery can work. What fun thing can we do after let's just go one time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And once you talk with them, it's so fun. They don't shout. The therapist doesn't shout it all to the world. It's private. So it's a safe place, and you can be vulnerable, and I know it's scary, but it's what you need to do to get help.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Powerful stuff. When I think about that, I don't know how old you were, 8th grade, teenager on the ski lift in that moment. Can you go back to that headspace and think, why were you quiet? Did you know inside what you were doing and that it was extreme behavior, but you just didn't know how to get out of it?
No, you're just I tell patients this all the time. You have to eat. It fuels your brain. It literally fuels the neuroreceptors in your stomach. They go directly to your brain for serotonin, dopamine. 90% of our serotonin receptors are in our gut. And my kids are so sick of hearing that because I just grill it. I'm like, you have to, eat. And I'm not saying good or bad. There's moderation in all things, but I had no fuel. I was not fueling my brain. I was not thinking straight. I didn't know I was sick. They could clearly see it. But no, I didn't know. So that makes me want to tell parents, if you see something's drastically different, just say, I don't know. I just went, luckily, I don't remember my mom having to coerce me to go, but yeah, I don't remember feeling like anything was wrong. I do remember being like, when she said that, I was like, oh, I'm not thinking, oh, I'm not being myself.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
There's so much in that of the power of connection and the proximity that we have to our loved ones. And there's a big disconnect nowadays for various reasons. But I think back hearing the stories of your parents and these lessons that they were giving you, they didn't really have tools other than their own kind of natural instinct or you got to like buck up, buddy, kind of thing. And that's kind of how it was back then. But now this conversation is so much more open and we have these tools that are exposed and opportunities to help in such a better way, but it's not happening because we're not connected the way we used to be. You know, your sister could sit next to you on the chairlift and be like, I noticed you're not talking, like what's going on, versus, you know, we sit on the same couch with our friends nowadays and we intentionally don't talk.
Yeah.
And that you just can't notice those things without that connection.
Yeah. So true.
Now, as a mother, Andrea, are you cued into much more of those things, you know, and behavior and what's going on? And what do you see clinically that you could maybe share, you know, for parents as they consider just what are the signs, what to notice or pay attention to?
Gonna get emotional again, because if I didn't have the skills I have, we'd be a disaster. Our marriage would be a disaster. Maybe not a disaster, that's harsh, but
Wow.
but honest, and our children would not be doing okay right now. We do have a daughter that we have ADHD and anxiety. We passed on our best traits.
Surprise, surprise.
And
Lucky kids.
and
You're welcome.
even early on when I was just starting my program, I would nag Adam about I have anxiety. I get it done a month ago before it's due.
It was like high school with my dad
Yeah.
all over again.
So I would be like,
it's like, I can't, honey, we're married. I can't take this from you.
but it took a long time. You were very nice, and he listened to just get it done. Like, should we get a tutor for OChem? Surely it's fine. He's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm out. This grade is what it is. And that made me panic. But luckily, so communication is huge. He told me, I feel like you are my dad, like in high school, you know, nagging, saying, get it done, say, you're so smart. So me learning that, and then we've applied it to our, one of our daughters, where it's less of a fight because he has lived what is happening. And I know not only from experience, but in training, you know, what to do. And then also with the anxiety, I know teenagers, you know, get snarky and snippy, but just learn to talk her through that instead of meet her, you know, and fight it out. No, just walk away. Like, your brain is not thinking when you're that anxious. You have to cool off and repair. So it's okay if you get in these little tiffs, but repairing, taking a break, and talking her through and using skills that I teach patients. I use it every day. Yeah. My voodoo tricks with my kids, you know, and
That's awesome.
and I watch what we say about eating and our bodies and all that too, because obviously that's on high alert.
But the natural tendencies creep in too,
Yeah.
right? So even Andrea with our daughter, as an outsider, I just see it. I'm like, Dad, Adam, dynamic. Andrea, one of our daughters, right? And I'm like, I can feel what she's feeling right now. I know how she feels, and this isn't successful. So Andrea and I'll step back and we'll talk together, and I'll say, hey, let me step in here. Let me take this one. And it's kind of that same conversation I had with my mom. And hey, you know, oh, you've been on YouTube for the past hour and a half. Okay, well, let's get started. You know, let me just sit here with you on your bed while you get started. And I won't say anything. Just, you know, I'm here for you. I'll just sit here.
Yeah.
Just get started.
Instead of reaming her.
Yeah. Instead,
know?
why were you on YouTube for the last hour and a half? Like, you know, you're behind. You have to get caught up. Why don't you have to do this right now, and in your head, you're
wanna
just like,
sing.
I know.
They're well aware
I
of
know
that.
more than anyone else. And I'm in a panic, and I
Totally.
just wasted all the time that I had. I
And there's
wasted
guilt.
all of it, and I can't get out, and I'm going to fail. But you can. Here we go. Let's just start.
Yeah.
Start. Would it be all right? Could I share one other story
Of
with
course.
our daughter?
Yeah.
So one of our mottos of our family that Andrea kind of implemented is that Beckstroms do hard things, right? Our kids say it all the time. Beckstroms do hard
Awesome.
things, right?
Jackson's smirking over there because like for 20 years, Eliza's, this is her mantra too. Telford's do our thing.
100%. I'm like, that is so good. But one of the things in our kids' lives for mental health and just for personal health, we said you need to always be doing something active. And so one of our daughters had danced for a long time, and she had decided, hey, I think that maybe it's time to move on from dance. And she was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do now to stay active? And she came home one day, and she had signed up for the mountain bike team. And we were both like, whoa.
It's a good choice, by the way. Really good choice.
This was not on the radar for her. I would have never, ever. She is super cautious. She's anxious. She's, she'd never
Amazing.
been on a bike. She'd never, she knew how to ride a bike, but
Yeah.
we were not like a biking family. So she signed up with a friend, and Andrea and I were like, wow, okay. So we got her all signed up. We got to where, and it's still a couple of months away. So we finally got to the first practices. And the night before, she's like, what am I doing? She's like, I am going to throw up. I am so sick and nervous. I do not want to go. And we had during COVID bought mountain bikes because we thought, hey, it'll be fun, just something to try, just to bike as a family. We weren't like getting into this thing, but we had bikes, thankfully. So I said, listen, I'm going to help you start. I said, let me just get my bike and I will ride with you and we'll just see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I said, we'll just ride in the very back, Dad and my daughter on a mountain bike ride, right? And convinced her, right? So we get to the trail and we're getting the bikes off the rack and she grabs the handlebars and she says, put it back on the car right now. She's like, I am not doing this. And I said, hey, Beckstroms do hard things. I said, come on, you got this. Let's just give it a go. So we rode in the back. We took our time, whatever. We got done. And she was like, hey, that was really hard, but that was really fun. I'm like really proud of myself that I tried this hard thing and I did it. But every practice for 2 months, if it was a new trail we hadn't ridden, put it back on the car. I'm not doing this. And I found out you can't ride it with the team as a parent. You have to be a coach. So I got all signed up to be a coach, and we would ride it. We just ride with the single lap girls. We took our time, and by the end, she was able to podium in some of those races in her single lap girls, and it was so empowering for her. She said, I did this hard thing, and it was incredible, and I overcame the anxiety and the worry, and it was just really a powerful thing for her about, being the struggle and fighting through hard things. It was a really powerful experience for her and for me to see as a father. It was great.
We're Nike disciples, so you're speaking our language
Yeah,
here.
that sounds like a new guest on the podcast. Right?
There's so much there, Adam, about one, her willingness to try something new. Two, that you as a father, as a parent, just dove in and owned it with her. That she could be in the struggle knowing that someone was going to be, with her in it. And what a cool thing. I'm picturing this legacy from your mom sitting in the road, so to speak, with you and encouraging you out of the road. But those late nights, of being in it with you. I'm going to get emotional about this now because our son, one of our children, our youngest, he is me. His mind is so me, and so in many ways I'm like, of course I got to sit with him because I gave him the DNA. But what is it about your approach of saying, I'm going to be in it with them, I'm going to try to make a difference, in a different way so that the outcome is different, as opposed to saying, well, this is how mine did it, so I'm just going to do it the same. You know what I mean? Stopping the cycle so that it doesn't continue.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I had never mountain biked before, never. So it was really I gotta help you through this, because it certainly, I wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna go be a mountain biker at 40, but the quote that you mentioned about being most powerfully positioned to help the person who you once were. I mean, obviously for me, it's my kids, and one of my kids in particular, at least right now. And even now, I mean, I'm not out of the struggle. It's not like all of a sudden ADHD is perfect for me. No way, right? It still affects me in my work. And I'm still looking for solutions and strategies and things that can help me. But I'm most interested in finding out about them so I can help her. If I can find something and be like, hey, this is the thing. This is going to, when you feel this way, do this. And it's going to be so much better for you. So anytime I can find something like that could help her, or even to help others, help myself, like I'm totally interested in that. But breaking the cycle, I'm super fortunate. I had a mom that sat in the road or coaxed me out of the road. So, but my life therapist at Aspire Counseling said, there's so many who do not have that. But there are resources, like Kevin said, right? There's so many more resources now that it's like, hey, you don't have to, the stigma, mental health, look, everyone has mental health issues. If it's anxiety or it's ADHD or it's, depression or whatever it is, holy cow, of course everyone has that. And you don't have to be like, I can't tell anyone I'm depressed. It's like, yeah, you're depressed. Let's get you help. If you have a broken leg, you don't be like, I can't tell anyone. Somebody will know I'm weak. Right. You say, hey, let's get a cast on that. Let's get it fixed. So if you've got depression, if you've got ADHD, there are resources. Let's get out there and help you find the things that'll help you to be successful. I mean, and one other thing too is you're not broken because you have ADHD. You have a challenge to deal with. And as you struggle through it, you will become an incredible person. There was one thing I remember. I had already got through law school, and I was top 10%. I had incredible grades, and I had applied to these really respectable jobs, and I'd gotten interviews. And it was this interview fair where you go, and there's, 50, 60, 70 firms coming to interview at this hotel room. And I got these interviews, and I just remember talking to my dad and being like, Dad, they are going to look at my undergraduate transcript with these grades, these blemishes, and they're going to be like, nah. Even then, I'd already been super successful, and I'm like, look, those struggles with ADHD and these things that it caused me, it's my own choices, right? I wasn't able to get through, but I had these things on my resume, and I'm like, those are going to be hurdles that stand in my way. And he just looked at me and he said, son, you have so many more abilities that go far beyond a transcript, and things that you have developed in your life that will stand out to these people. He said, they've already screened your transcript. You're past we're looking at your grades and your resume, and let those things shine through, and they'll want to hire you. He said, I promise. And so I guess that's a message, is just that ADHD doesn't define you. Yes, it's something to struggle through. And as you do it, you'll develop other things and become an incredible person and have more to offer that maybe others won't, or to offer to other people who are having the same struggle.
Yeah.
So
we've talked a lot about struggle, thus far with both of you. Share some thoughts, as we wrap up, about how this struggle has positioned you for the Stoke. When I think of ADHD in my own life, when I think of the perfectionism, when I think about the scrupulosity that's in our, family, which, for those of you that don't know that name, scrupulosity is religious OCD. You become obsessed with worthiness or, being perfect, for God. And all of those things are part of the DNA in our household. they have been the struggle, in our lives, but they have led to Stoke, and so whether it's people who struggle with ADHD or parents who are struggling with children with ADHD, ADHD has become my superpower. Although I can be, struggling to pay attention on certain things, Liza can talk to me for 2 minutes and then she'll say, you know what I mean? And I'll be like, can you repeat everything you just said 2 minutes ago? So I can check out. There are moments where it is a weakness for sure. But on the flip side, when it is something that I'm passionate about, when it is work or when it is my children or when it is Liza and I away from other distractions, my superpower is that I become incredibly focused. I can see things that, to be frank, other people can't. And in business, when you can start to see things clearly in a broader sense, you become very good at seeing strategy well beyond the next step, maybe even the next 2 steps. So it has served me well. I would not take it away. I'm so grateful that I've had those, if it makes sense. There were things that were missing, but because they were missing, I became sensitive and hypersensitive in other ways that are amplifiers. And so on one hand, there is a weakness. On other things, I gain these incredible strengths, muscles that I wouldn't have had otherwise. They become the stoke. What's the stoke, Andrea, for you? When you now think about the struggles you've faced, what has become the stoke?
I think our family's a big one. Just all the struggle I've been through and being able to have empathy and understanding, which I know we've touched on before, but that makes our relationships better with Adam and with our girls, and it will for our whole life. It'll just get better and better, and we are very open and talk about it. That is stoke to me. To not brush stuff under the rug, to not feel like they have to be alone in the dark. When you push stuff away in the dark, that's a breeding ground for it to grow in a negative way. And it's just like, I read this somewhere, if you have a nightmare, the way to get over that nightmare quick is turn the light on. And so I love when we've had these situations of anxiety with our kids or some low mood. I wouldn't say full-blown depression, but when they're like, am I ever going to feel better after a fish dies? I love that you just add some light to it and talk about it. You don't just say, you'll be fine, buck up, like get up. Yeah, they can sit in that and feel it. It's good to feel those feelings, but they don't last forever. Other things are just shouting out to the world that there's hope and help. Nothing gets me fired up more than when people say, oh, I know LÉVO, or oh, I see a therapist, and I would have never thought I could feel better. I would have never thought there was hope or light. I mean, that is incredible. Another thing that's so great is the empathy you feel when you've been in the struggle, because now if someone's got road rage or they're super rude, like at a store, checking me out, I'm just always like, oh, must be a hard day. You just know that's not them. That is a defense. The anger and the snarkiness, that's their defense because something inside hurts. So I don't know. No one can really offend me. I just know.
Wow.
I just know there's a lot of hurt.
That's a super.
And it's quiet hurt. It's lonely. And I've been there, and I just, the stoke is being passionate and just wanting to help in any way I can. At any hour. I tell the providers, call me even in the middle of the night. I just love what's happening, and that the discussion with most people is becoming more open. That is exciting that things are changing, I feel. In my home growing up, and still, wonderful, loving home, but not a lot of discussion on the hard things. A lot of tiptoeing, a lot of cold wars, as silent treatment. You know, that's not helpful. And maybe that's some of why I felt like I suffered alone. I don't know. But I don't want that for my family. I don't want that for my kids. I don't want that for others. I want people to talk openly. There's a quote by C.S. Lewis that I love that says it's much easier to talk about tooth pain than heart pain, meaning, you know, emotional pain. It just is, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
So trying to change the narrative gets me stoked.
Awesome. Adam, what are you stoked about?
I think the thing that stokes me is just the watching people, and especially our children, to find success amidst the struggle, right? So seeing them, like for example, seeing my daughter on the podium after knowing the struggle with anxiety that she dealt with, and being able to fight through that and say, I'm gonna meet it head on. I'm gonna push myself. I can do this. I can do hard things. And then at the end, to see her empowered and to say, hey, looking back, I did that hard thing and I can do the next hard thing, right? Our kids a couple of them play the violin, a couple play the piano. We had one of our kids who was getting ready for a hard violin thing, and she was like, I cannot do this. It's not going to be perfect, so I don't even want to play it. She's like, I'm just making so many mistakes. I said, do you think that we have expectations that you're going to be a concert violinist? No. Do you think that we're here because the only reason we have you in is because you're going to get a scholarship to go just for school or whatever? No. We're here so that you can struggle through learning to play the violin and to fail, to try this thing that's really hard. And maybe this time you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but put in the effort, really try. Try now, really try hard, do your best. If you fall short, get back on the horse, do it again. And that's what life's all about, right? Try this hard thing, deal with anxiety, push through ADHD. When you find that success and you're able to, even if it's not 100%, you know, maybe you didn't podium in that race, but you finished that race.
Yeah.
You know, we had another daughter who was super sad because she had crashed and she wasn't on the podium, even though she had been in other races. And she was pretty down, but I was like, are you kidding me? You wrecked and you were still like 11th, you know? So like, hey, good for you, man. And she got back on and
Finish the race.
yeah. And even one of our smaller daughters, right, who just wrecked a bike, and she's like, I will never ride again. This is our youngest. She's like, I will never ride again.
Yeah.
But just seeing her, because she was anxious about it, she knew what the consequence might be if she did it again, and then just getting back on riding, finding success amid the struggle, just seeing the empowerment. And for Andrea, I mean, this new job for her was, she's like, I don't know, same thing back to college, right, where I am the dumbest kid and I don't have anything to offer. And just me and you, Tom, I'm super grateful that you saw the ability that she had and the incredible talents and the incredible leader that she could be and is. But just to sit back and to tell her, you are incredible and you are incredibly talented and you have so much to offer and to grow, and to see her to grow into that and to now be who she is with LÉVO, that is definitely stoke for me, because she's an incredible person and she's an incredible leader and teacher. So it's been awesome to see her to grow into that.
I tried to jump ship a couple times. I was like, I'm out. This isn't for me.
Every time Andrea tries to quit, we throw more ownership at her. Watching Andrea at work is it's an honor. It really is. One of the cool things about LÉVO is that's near and dear to my heart, because of my mom and because of my mother-in-law and because of a few other amazing women throughout my life, it has been so important to me that in this next venture, LÉVO, in my startup career, my entrepreneurship career, this stage, it was important for women to be a huge part of what happens. Liza, my wife, has been, part of this as well. But when we go to LÉVO, when I go to meetings with LÉVO, and the company is majority run by women, it's amazing, because I've sat in thousands of board meetings the last 20 years, and I can tell you that those organizations who have women leaders, they're just different. And they're different in a very positive way. The motive and the drive behind organizations that are run by women, it doesn't come from here. And I'm not talking about intellect. These are incredibly bright, talented women. But when an organization is run from the gut, right, from feeling, the tone and the culture and the implications on the organizations is significantly different, in my opinion, for the better. And so it's cool to go to these meetings and to see these women lead the organization in a way that is human-driven, not necessarily results or ego-driven. It just comes from a different place. Andrea mentioned several times compassion. Andrea, maybe the last question for you and we'll wrap up, but talk about that, being a woman leader who happens to also be in the mental health space. How do you blend those two things, and how has that been for you?
It's the best, because I love that I know as a provider what the providers are going through, and I have a lot of compassion for them, and I don't want them to get burned out. That doesn't serve anyone, because we're already so short on help.
Yeah.
So I feel deeply for them, and I love that we can talk about it openly. They tell me when they're struggling, and it's just heavy. It's a lot of important decisions to be made, and that's exhausting for them, but they do such a good job. And yeah, just caring about all the people on the team, that runs deep, and it's very sincere. We are very careful on who we bring in, because we want to keep the culture very welcoming, very not safe. Well, yes, safe, but another word, just comfortable for people, to walk in and so yeah, being one of the leaders, I've learned a lot from the other women on the board, and just admire how much they care about it as well. There's just so much real life experience that I think makes the whole business and place to help others runs so deep, so much more beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone has that compassion.
It's awesome. I love that word, deep. It is. When you're there, it doesn't feel, it's strange, but it doesn't feel business to me. There's a depth there that feels more like a cause than a business.
Yes, definitely.
Such a purpose and a commitment behind it. Thank you for having us in your home. It's been great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
You've had your daily dose.